Hi everyone. Today you'll see that I have a variety of different pine cones in front of me. These are pine cones that I've collected throughout my walk this week. I collected some small ones and some bigger ones. I love pine cones. I think they're really pretty and there's a lot of fun activities that you can do with a pine cone. But today we are going to do science with them. If you happen to go on a walk or maybe in your backyard you may have some, you can find some pine cones that would be really helpful. I'm going to pick up just one pine cone and I'm going to examine it, and you'll see that in this pine cone the scales are all open. Now if we examine further, if I look inside, I can see that I can take out, well, a little bit hard, let's see, oh, there we go. I can take out something inside of it. What do you think is hiding inside of these scales in this pine cone? These are seeds. These are actual pine cone seeds. And I have a plate here filled with some pine cone seeds. And let's see if we can get some more out. If you have a pine cone, try doing this with yours. Tap, and you'll see a whole bunch more of these seeds will fall out. Anyone know what these seeds are? If you've ever had a pine nut, that's what these seeds are. They're pine cone seeds, or what we call a pine nut. Now, these from the store are safe to eat. These are not, so don't ever try eating those. But again, we can do science with those. You want to see up close what these seeds look like? They're kind of this yellow, small, oval shape. And I'll show you a close-up in a little bit. Before we can talk about today's lesson, I want to start off with a little experiment. For this experiment, you're going to need 2 clear cups. They can be any size, any shape. A recycled container will do. I like clear because I want to see what's going on the inside. You're also going to need 2 pine cones. Any size will do. If you're going to use a bigger pine cone, then a bigger container. And then you're going to need some water. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some water into one of the cups, and I'm going to leave the other cup empty. Let's watch what happens when I take one pine cone and I'm going to insert it into the water, and I'm going to leave it like that for a few hours. Then I'm going to take another pine cone and leave it inside the cup that doesn't have any water, and we're going to leave that for the same amount of time. So what's in this cup? Water and a pine cone. What's in this cup? Just air and a pine cone. Leave it, and then we'll see what happens in a few hours. We'll check back on it. Let's do a close-up so I can show you what we're gonna do. Again, you have 2 cups. 1 cup gets regular water, almost to the very top, and the other cup, just to keep the air that it has inside of it, 1 pine cone goes into the cup with the water, and the other pine cone is going to go into the cup with just air. Now, while we have the close-up, I'm going to show you a close-up of my pine cone. We're going to look inside, and we're going to try to find the seeds that I was talking about. Oh, they're stuck, hard to pull them out. Well, let's see if I can get this one. Here is what the seeds look like when they come out. let's take a closer look at these pine cones and see what they look like. The first one that was kept in air, nothing's changed. Looks exactly the same. What about the one that was kept in the water? It's been about 2 hours. Take it out. Does this look different? It does, right? Look at the scales. The scales are now all closed, almost all closed. Bet you if I leave it a little bit longer. What's this? There's something that just sticking out. Oh, part of the seed. Can't see it well. But look, this was the before and now the after. I hope you were able to try that too. Now let's investigate further. We had 2 pine cones, one that was kept in air and one that was kept in water. What was the difference? The one that was kept in water actually had the scales close up. Quick little review, we said that the pine cone has seeds inside of it. And let's look at those seeds one more time. And these seeds are, in fact, we know to be pine nuts, right? They come from a pine cone, hence pine nut. I'm gonna show you guys something and then maybe you can guess, why does this pine cone close up when it gets wet? So I really need a fan for this experiment, but I don't have one, but found something just as good. I have a little pump that blows out air just like a fan. And I have my plate here filled with all these pinecone seeds. And let's see what happens when I start to blow air on them. What happened to my seeds? Well, most of them flew away. What force made them fly away? The power of air, right? Fast-moving air. And what do we call that in nature? You might be able to see the trees behind me moving, the branches moving. What is that called? Wind. Now these seeds, what do they want to do? What's the goal? What's the final goal for each of these seeds? They want to live on. And how do they live on? It's by getting replanted, getting all of their requirements, all the sun and all the water and everything else. But they want to disperse. They want to spread out and they want to go everywhere. And what is the force that takes them there? The power of wind. Now again, let's go back to this pine cone. Do you know why the pine cone will close up when it's wet? Well, this water was a cup of water. Will we ever have pine cones sitting in a cup of water? Not exactly. But where do we get water naturally fall on these pine cones? Can you guess? It's the rain, right? Pine cones get wet when it rains. And you guessed it, in nature, the pine cone will actually close up when it's wet. Why does it do that? It's the pine cone's way of naturally protecting the seeds from being washed away. These seeds are nice and light, and when there's wind, they can actually fly and disperse and spread out and get replanted naturally, not by us, but just by their own mechanism. Now, if they get wet, you saw some of my seeds over here in front, they got wet. And if they get wet, are they able to fly away? Not anymore. They're stuck. And that's why the pine cone will close up. And that's what we're going to talk about today is seed dispersal. Is how do seeds disperse? How do they go all over the place? So we learned one way right now. What was that first way? Let's think about it. The first way was the wind, right? Air, fast-moving air will carry these seeds all over the place. Now these seeds were nice and light, and they could be carried away. What about seeds that are not so light? What do I have here? I just have a picture. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a real one. This is a coconut. Do you think a coconut could travel by wind? No, it can't, right? It's way too heavy. It would be kind of funny to see coconuts flying all over the place, right? Coconuts can't travel by wind, but they have another way. What do you think would happen to this coconut if I dropped it in the ocean? It would float. And coconuts can travel, can disperse their seeds from a coconut tree. They will drop and they will travel by water, and they'll go to a new destination, and that's how they disperse. So we've talked about two ways so far, right? We've talked about wind and we've talked about water. Let's talk about the other ways. Another way that seeds can get dispersed in nature. What do I have here? I have an apple and I have a pear. On the inside of both my apple and my pear, what do we have? Seeds, that's right. So we eat these apples and pears, and we cut them and we slice them, and we try not to eat the seeds. But who else eats fruit containing seeds, and they might actually eat the seed? That's right, animals. So let's talk about animals for a second. If they are walking through the forest and they actually eat a fruit, they eat an apple, deer walks through, eats a pear, and eats the whole fruit. Well, animals do produce wastes. And when they have eaten the entire seed, their body doesn't digest the seed. There's no nutrients for them in there. But maybe hours later or days later, those wastes that they produce will contain the seeds that they also ate. And those wastes will get replanted somewhere. So animals, that's one way they could spread that could help us spread seeds. Another way is something you guys may have seen before, and this is a dandelion. Now dandelions filled with many, many, many seeds. And this is something that we'll see a lot of in forests, maybe even in your backyard. I picked this one from my backyard. If I touch it, it feels kind of spiky and furry. Now let's talk about animals. What do they have on their bodies? They have lots of fur and lots of hair, right? Did you guys see one fly away right now? What do you think took it away? Wind, right? So that was seed dispersal we just saw. Did I do that? No, it was just the wind. Let's go back to the animal for just a second. And animals have fur and hair covering their entire body, kind of like this rug that I have here. Now what do you think happens if this is, let's pretend this is the animal and this is the dandelion. If my animal is walking through the forest and picks up a dandelion, look at all the seeds and all the seeds that got caught inside of the fur. Bring it closer to you for just a second so you can see it. Now these seeds, are they gonna stay here forever? No. He's gonna walk through the forest, maybe rub against other things, or maybe there'll be wind that will blow the seeds away. Pretty easy. Let's see if I can get the rest of my dandelion to spread. Just a little bit of wind, right? And the seeds are now dispersing all over the place. Now the last way the seeds can get dispersed are by gravity. You might look up at trees and you might find lots of trees that have fruits on them, or many different types of seeds. Now remember, gravity is also a force that brings everything down to the ground. As things drop down to the ground, well, they've been moved from one place to another, and their seeds will now get dispersed. It's do a quick review of all the different ways that seeds can get dispersed. Animals, either through their wastes or through their fur and through their hair. Wind, fast-moving air, can move seeds around. Water, like the ocean or even rain, can move seeds from one place to another. And the last way is the force of gravity. Hope you guys enjoyed that lesson on seed dispersal. Now it's your time to go and find your pine cones and experiment with pine cones and see if you can get them to close. One more thing before we leave. What do you think is going to happen to this pine cone if I leave it to dry? Try it. Would love to hear what happens with your pine cones. Hi. Wondering what I'm doing? Doing the job of a busy bee. I'm pollinating. I want you to watch this video and tell me what you think is going on. Think about it, and then we'll talk about what really is happening. Did you guys see that video? It's pretty cool, right? I was actually able to videotape a bee live in my grandmother's backyard. So I went to my grandmother's house to visit her, and she has a really, really big garden. And in that garden, there were tons and tons and tons of bees. And they were busy. They had nothing to do with me. They had a job out there. What was their job? Their job was to pollinate. So I have a bee here on a stick. Now this bee, don't worry, is not alive, but it was once alive. I didn't kill it, but I tend to find dead bees in my backyard at times, so I keep them. And what I have done today is I have glued it onto a toothpick to show you guys a model of what pollination would look like. Now what is pollination and what are bees doing anyways? So bees, here's a toy model, not a real model. Bees love to go from flower to flower. And the reason they do that is because flowers have something that the bees need. Actually, they have a few things. They go to the flowers to drink the nectar. That's the sweet, sweet juice, and that's their food. But in the process, they also collect pollen. Now, pollen is what flowers produce, and that pollen gets collected by the bees. You'll see the bee has 2 antennae. It has 6 legs. On its hind legs in the very, very back, it's got something called the pollen basket. and that's where it stores all of the pollen. It collects all of the pollen and it takes it back to the hive, and that's what it uses to make honey. Now this seems all great for the bee, right? But what about the flower? Is the flower just giving up all of its nectar and all of its pollen? How does this benefit the flower? So as the bee goes from one flower to another flower to another flower, I told you the pollen is collected in the pollen basket. But if you look at a bee up close, you'll see that it's one furry animal. It's hairy and furry all over. And what do we know about hairy, furry animals? Things tend to stick to them. What do you think it's sticking to this hairy, furry animal? That's right, pollen. And we've just learned, do you think that pollen stays on this furry animal the entire time? No, it doesn't. Some of it does, but some of it actually comes off when this bee visits another flower, and then another flower, and another flower. So what's the goal of this process? How is the flower benefiting from this process of the bees? Well, this bee is actually taking the pollen and moving it from flower to flower, and that's what the flower needs to be able to grow fruit and to grow more seeds. Without this pollination process, it wouldn't happen. Now, bees are not the only animals that pollinate, but they are the major pollinators. Birds pollinate, butterflies pollinate, moths even pollinate, a lot of different insects. Basically anything you'll see flying around, visiting the flowers. You can hear the birds in the background chirping. They're probably busy pollinating, but they don't even know that they're pollinating. Now, the pictures and the video that you saw in my grandmother's yard, that was pomegranates. Now, those pomegranates were not mature yet. They hadn't grown, but they were starting to. You could see the flowers and some tiny, tiny little fruits starting to grow. Here is the full, complete fruit. And if we look on the inside, what do we see? Seeds. And these seeds, each one of these seeds, through this seed dispersal, will get replanted and plant a brand new tree, unless it gets eaten first. Really yummy fruit. Now, once the seed gets planted and it gets the right amount of sun and the water, it'll grow again. But will it have fruit again? Only if it has pollination. If the flowers get pollinated, then they will start to make fruits again. Now, as we look at this flower up close, you'll see the petals all around. And what do you see in the center? There's a little bit of purple, and there's all this yellow stuff all around. And that's the pollen. Let's look at my first bee for comparison. And this one was not pollinating. Now let's look at this bee and see. Can you tell the difference? Look at all the pollen on his back. This one has really been busy pollinating. He's got all this pollen. As he goes and he visits one flower, picks up pollen, drops off a little more, and then goes to another flower, takes up pollen, drops off some more. And in this process, he is pollinating all of these flowers. Hope you guys enjoyed that lesson on seed dispersal and pollination.